Thank you very much, Mike, for a nice introduction and for everything you did to pull this together. I really appreciate that. And it's nice to see some of the people that have come back to be part of this discussion. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here again. We have a rather small crowd, so let's keep it informal. Interrupt me anytime you want. We can discuss any subject you like at any time. I have slides, but we can go back to them as time permits. And same thing for people who are online. Jump in anytime you want to have a conversation. Actually, I was expecting a little bit more people, but because it's Friday and because it's day before the big game, people have families, they have nice weather. I'd rather be outside myself.
Well,
but I am here with you.
Parking's a problem, as you know.
Yeah.
And,
but it's always exciting for me to be here. As Mike said, my son went to college here. We spent many weekends here watching Wolverines play, and I used to come and visit often, so this is a fun place for me to come back. And this is my second time in 2 years, and as you heard, we're going to have our company member forum meeting here. Hopefully I'll be able to join you even at that time. Let me tell you what my plan is today. First, I'll give you a brief overview about ANSI. Many of you know that, but the people who are perhaps from Michigan, you may not, so I'll repeat that for their benefit. I'll explain how we interface with international organizations, how we connect with the ISO and IEC family, and how we deal with regional groups. Then I'll talk about, well, I got to control this. What did I do? Are we okay? No problem. Then I'll talk about the importance that standards play in our everyday life. And I really mean that, everyday life. And the way the standards and innovation work together and how we should parlay that into our engagements and our successes. After that, I'll talk about in ways that University of Michigan, the academic community can get involved in standardization and reap the benefits. And finally, I'll tell you some of the key reasons why academia and educational institutes should really participate and give you some examples of how you can get that engagement going even at a higher level than you're at now. So let's get started. First, for those of you who don't know ANSI, we actually coordinate the U.S. standardization system. Usually the countries around the world, this function is performed by a government agency, usually the Ministry of Commerce or an entity that develops standards on behalf of the nation, or somebody alike. Well, ANSI is neither a government agency nor are we a standards developer. We are a not-for-profit organization that doesn't develop standards but oversees the development of them by hundreds and hundreds of organizations in our country. And that sounds a little bit odd because they think we should be doing that, but the reality is we contribute in a different way, and we make sure that the development and the application of the documents that are created is done properly. And we'll talk more about that down the road. From the international perspective, ANSI is the U.S. member body, and there can only be one per country, for international organizations like ISO and IEC. Rameir, come on in. Welcome. And to the International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC. Regionally, we are the U.S. representative to the Pacific Area Standards Congress, PASC, Pacific Accreditation Cooperation, which covers all the conformity assessment activity that you talked about. And conformity assessment is a key component of standardization because without that, all you really have is standards as lines of instructions on a computer screen or in a hard copy text that you keep in your office drawer. So application of the document is more critical in my view than development of the criteria by which products must show compliance. So PAC takes care of that, and the Pan American Standards Commission, COPANT, where I have the honor of serving as its president, I was just elected to the second term this year, earlier, and I have 2 more years to go. Actually, it's the first time ever that they elected a president from the U.S. This is a union made up of all the 36 countries in the North American region, South American region, Central America, and the Caribbean. And believe it or not, for the first time, we have a U.S. president. I guess they figured I was Latino or something. We fooled them. Anyway. And for more than 20 years, ANSI has had a collaborative dialogue with the Europeans. CEN, CENELEC, and ETSI are the three standards developing organizations which develop combined standardization solutions for Europe. And in the recent years, we have invited European Commission to be part of that dialogue. And when we meet with them, it's not just the private sector people like ANSI and our companies and our SDOs and our certification bodies, but it also involves our government agencies. And additionally, as you'll see on the slide, there are some examples of we're having bilateral agreements with all the major countries of the world. All the developed economies like Japan, like Germany, like UK, and the developing and upcoming countries also, like China and India and Brazil, and some of the smaller ones, where we have unique opportunities for trade and interaction, and where we have business interests. Above all, ANSI is a membership organization, domestically and regionally and internationally. We represent hundreds of thousands of members from industry, from trade associations, from standards developing organizations, from consumer groups, from government, from academia now, and from accreditation bodies. And many, many others are also engaged, depending on the type of document, type of compliance solution, and type of the activity. We'll be engaging just about anybody you want. For example, we'll have people from labor industry. We'll have people from unions. We'll have people who are involved in dispute resolution. We'll have people from the service economy, depending on what it is. If it's hospitality industry, we'll have people who are agents, travel agents. We'll have people of all natures available depending on the constituency for that type of activity. So all in all, we represent the interest and engagement of over 125,000 companies in the U.S. and almost 3.5 million professionals worldwide. When I say there are 3.5 million professionals engaged with ANSI, that doesn't mean they're all members of ANSI. They are members of organizations that are members of ANSI. So, for example, if we are working with NEMA, National Electrical Manufacturers Association, which represents all the electrotechnical industry, power generation, power distribution, transmission, transformers, you name it, you use all of that. So all of their companies and all of those guys have access to ANSI and its participation opportunities. And many of them are members that way. But a whole bunch of them, like GE, Kraus-Hein, Schneider, you name it, they're members directly also. So many of them are duplicated over. But that gives us a very robust participation from all these types of groups. So with that background in place, I would like to talk about a little bit about why standards are important. It might be more interesting to people who are online, because I think several of you are very well informed about that. But let me cover that. And let me also talk a little bit about how these standards are developed. So that's an interesting activity in this country. It's a little different than what's done in other areas of the world. So first of all, a basic definition. As an engineer, you always want to have a definition. A standard is a document established by consensus, if it's a good one, provides rules, guidelines, and characteristics for activities or their results. There are standards for products, there are standards for systems, there are standards for processes, there are standards for personnel. You name an activity, you name a thing, there's a standard for it. Everything has a standard or some set of criteria. Whether you know it or not, they exist. There are even standards for chair manufacturing, even though we're not involved in them. So from design to manufacturing to distributions, standards and compliance to them. So here comes the issue of conformity assessment. If you want me to talk a little bit more about it, I'll mention it. Conformity assessment is the key element of application. World Trade Organization, national standards bodies, industry, consumers, government, they don't want to know what the standard is alone. They want to know who's complying with them and who's not and why. Because the reality is the application of the standards where rubber hits the road is the most difficult part of our activity. Standardization really starts with standard, but it ends with the application of that standard into compliance demonstration to somebody. Who is that somebody? It's a regulatory agency. It could be FDA, as we talked about this morning. It could be EPA. It could be a electrical inspector in Ann Arbor who won't turn on the power to your building unless you show them that you comply with all the codes and all the standards. It could be a consumer. It could be a retail organization. Walmart won't buy your processes, your products, unless you can show them that you comply with the right standards. Not that you know about the standard, but you actually comply. And you show them a label or you show them a certificate. So compliance activity consumes proportionally about 100 times as many resources as standards development. So if the standards development organization activity globally is a couple of $1 billion, certification and compliance would be in trillions of dollars. That also includes things like inspections, audits, quality management of systems, reassessment, field surveys, recalls, reassessments. So conformity assessment takes on many different roles, and many of them are conducted by private sector, but many more are also conducted by federal agencies, regulatory agencies, like OSHA, like CPSC. They have hundreds of inspectors out there just checking to see if the products that fall under their purview are really complying or not. Many of them rely on the data developed by private sector organizations, such as UL, such as NSF, such as certification bodies of different types, to see if the standards are being complied with. Otherwise, they issue public recall notices, they take them to court, they make them withdraw their products from the marketplace. So that's my ad-lib definition of conformity assessment that you wanted. So now we can move on. So the conformity assessment part, as well as standards, really impact about 85% of all the global trade. And I don't know what that number is this year or what that number was last year, but 2 years ago, that 85% meant to the U.S. economy $13 trillion. $13 trillion of the economic activity in this country was impacted by standards and compliance to the standards. So the standards and conformance don't just impact the trade or sales opportunities, but they also impact a lot of other things like strength of the workforce, people who are doing the work, manufacturing, people who are in the services area. It underpins the global commerce and even the direction, if you will, of innovation. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So let me focus on standards and innovation and how that works together, because it's a very critical area, especially for a research university like you guys and other research institutions. So if innovation is the fuel of economic engines, then standards are a critical part of that formula. They go hand in hand. They are well-suited partners because one builds upon the other. In some cases, a standard will precede innovation by establishing a baseline for design and performance that will satisfy the user requirements, the buyer requirements. In other cases, innovative idea finds a place in the marketplace, becomes the foundation for a standard. So one can come first or the other one, but they build on each other. Taken together, innovation and standardization create new opportunities for growth, for continually, constantly reshaping the familiar landscape. They facilitate continuous improvement and better products and new generation of products and new generation of systems, and new products and systems create opportunities for all kinds of things: economic development, employment, new companies, new activities, new international trade. So it's fair, though, to talk about a negative part of this as well. There are competitive forces at play in the world of standards too. The incorporation of a particular technology, a particular design in a standard can often limit creation of new solutions or new ideas. So that's the limitation, and we need to be carefully engaging on that, and we do. ANSI has criteria for that. We have a very active intellectual property rights committee, which deals with how you capture intellectual property in the content of a standard, and what are the reasonable terms for allowing others to use that incorporated IP by others. It has to be fair market price, it has to be monitored, and if there are challenges, you can take them to court and get a fair settlement. So these are some of the things we do to protect that type of abuse. Also, innovation can be a problem sometimes. They can bring down an entire industry. MP3 files actually killed the CD industry. And there are many, many examples of that when a new innovation, a new activity has wiped out a previous activity. Sometimes they transition peacefully and coexist for a while. Sometimes they just eliminate that whole activity. So these are the type of things that are creating what I would call creative destruction in our economic system. And this technological innovation and the standardization and the limitations of use and exploitation rights, in my view, in the view of many, create a healthy, vibrant economy because they are creating opportunities and growth and improvement of products and systems and applications for the betterment of society on the whole. So we benefit from it. When you think about the GDP of U.S., and I mentioned this morning, when we were talking. So 50% of all the economic growth in U.S. nowadays comes from industries that didn't exist 20 years ago. They didn't even exist. There was no Apple, there was no Google. You didn't have your, iPhone. You didn't have any of the laptops. I mean, you had the laptop, but you didn't have the iPads. And they didn't exist not only for U.S., they didn't exist for anybody in the world. So imagine, so see what will be there 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. You don't even know. We can't even imagine, because the pace of innovation is accelerating, not going the other way. So it's a very interesting dynamic. So if you're interested in standards development work, there's a vast sea of possibilities, and it's a roaring sea because things are constantly changing. So I think you need to think about that. It's a good field to get into if you can figure out how to engage yourself. Let me talk a little bit about standardization domestically first. Here in the U.S., there are over 100,000 standards that have been developed by hundreds and hundreds of SDOs and consortia. Consortia is another form of developing standards which is not based on consensus building approach. This is usually done in very fast-moving technologies like IT sector, where like-minded companies with like-minded technologies are working to accelerate development of a standard. They don't have the time, neither do they have desire, neither do they have the ability to engage all the constituencies, and they move forward. And oftentimes these are operational linkages, connectivity, dependency type of documents, and do not have health, safety, or environmental issues attached to them. And that's what makes them somewhat acceptable, even though they are not consensus-based. We will not accredit them if they came to us, because that's not the process that we depend on. They would not find acceptance in international standardization organizations either, but they do perform functionality that is necessary and support our economy, so they go on. And we have a lot of consortia members, and we have several consortia organizations that are accredited by ANSI, but many more are not. So there are hundreds of them, and out of those, 11,000 standards have been approved by ANSI in this country as American national standards. And I'll talk more about that, because those are the highest level premium quality standards that exist, ANSs. Let me talk now a little bit about international standards and how they are developed. There are also hundreds of thousands of standards that are going on in development stage and that exist that need to be modified and revised. For example, ISO has 700 technical committees and subcommittees, we call them TCs or SCs, that are developing standards. IEC, the International Electrotechnical Commission, which is in the electrotechnical space, has over 170 TCs and subcommittees, and they are doing their work. And as U.S. stakeholders, you'll be able to participate in these activities if you were working with ANSI, if you were a member of ANSI, and if you were working with our U.S. National Committee for the IEC part. I think the numbers right below that ISO number is U.S. has 586 ISO committee engagements. That's over 80% of everything that is done in the ISO world. And we have about 163 committee engagements in the IEC. That's over 90% of everything they do. So as you can imagine, it's very robust engagement from U.S. In fact, in my view, we are the largest participant on the global stage. The only country that even comes close is Germany, and oftentimes they're pretty close to us, or we're one or two. It just depends on which time of the year you ask the question. So I'm very proud of the level of participation, but for the most part, academic institutions like you guys and like others are not as engaged as they should be. If you think about the footprint that exists at your campuses, if you think about what you are, you're really like a mini city. You have hospitals, you have power generation, you have facilities, you have stadiums, you have dormitories, you have roads, you have maintenance, you have services. You are like a mini city. And because of that, you have so much to offer. I think it's critical for us to maintain a strong voice at the international level, but it's our responsibility. It's my job to make sure that voice is made up of all the key players. It's not just those that happen to be there. It's all those that should be there. And because of what you contribute to the economy, and Mike and I were debating this last night as we were driving, and we estimated last year that the GDP contribution of all the academic institutions in this country is about 12%. But then we said maybe it's not quite 12, maybe it's 8 or 9, because it depends on how you count. Depends on what numbers are included and what are not, and depends on how you define the footprint of the academic institution and what they cover. no matter what, even if it's 9%, even if it's 8%, that's a lot of activity, a lot of economic contribution to the U.S. GDP. You have a damn right to be there. You almost have an obligation to be there to make sure that what's being done has your input in it, because you're definitely affected by it. So I think you need to be more engaged. That's my message here. Now, let me talk a little bit about the American National Standards process. I think it's an interesting dynamic. There are 240 now ANSI accredited standards developers. So you've heard of many of them. ASTM is one, some of you are one. But there are 240 of them, and that number is constantly increasing. And you can see them on our website. The latest list is at ansi.org/ASD, which also includes the scope of their activities. So you can not only see who they are, you can also see what they cover and what type of product lines and activities they are responsible for. Only the American accredited standards developers can submit their standards for approval as the American National Standards, the ANSs as we call them. But it's important to note that not all the standards developed by that SDO, by that organization, would become ANSs. Only the specific documents that pass that rigorous process, that go through that whole set of criteria, those become the ANSs. At the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned that ANSI is not a standards developer. We don't make standards, but we decide which ones become the accepted and used standards in the country. So we don't name a single SDO to say, this is your area of responsibility, you will develop that standard, you'll develop that solution. If you come day after I accredited Mike and want to develop a standard in similar space, you will be able to. There's no restriction on that. In other countries, that's not possible. You may have a different idea, you may have a different approach, your scope may be slightly different. Of course, we don't want repetitive or duplicative documents, but we want documents that are different or better, and let the marketplace decide. We don't decide who the winners are and who the losers are. Marketplace decides that. So what is our job, you would ask? What the hell are we doing then? If you're not managing this, what are you doing? Well, what we're really managing is the process by which the standards are developed. If you don't pay attention to or are responsible for the content, you want to make sure that the content comes out just right, and it comes out with the process and the way of development that is acceptable to you and to others like you. So what we do is watch for the integrity of the process, making sure that all the organizations that we accredit follow all and every one of our essential requirements. Not 9 out of 10. Too low? Okay, so what do? Move it higher? Is that better? You waited so long to tell me. You just stopped me earlier. Anyway, is it better now? Okay.
It's just the live stream.
Okay. So the requirements really ensure that standards are developed in an open and a balanced and consensus-based process. Things like, were the proper procedures followed? Were the proper comments given consideration? Were the complaints that were made, were they addressed? Was there an opportunity for an appeal if somebody had concern about a process or a solution? Were all the experts involved? Were the right people at the table? Were all the affected constituencies, all the affected groups had a chance to be included in the process? These are the type of things that we keep an eye on and make sure that only technically sound and valid documents are ultimately produced. And ultimately, that's what creates their wide acceptance, not anything else. So these are the type of things that we do to safeguard the integrity of the process and to assure that the ANSs retain their value as the ultimate mark of quality, not just in the U.S., but are recognized as such in the international arena. If you have an ANS and we submit that to ISO or IC as a subject matter for international document, it moves through pretty smoothly. There isn't too much resistance because people know how these are put together. Let's now turn to the ISO and IC standards development process. I think that's also pretty similar, but they work in a different format because each country sends its representation. Standards work is carried out through technical committees, subcommittees, and other work groups, and is composed of experts that are representative of the member NSB. So whoever goes from US comes through ANSI. Whoever comes from Germany comes through DIN. Whoever comes through UK comes through BSI. That's how it works. One member, one vote per country. And for each activity, there's a mirror committee for every committee and every subcommittee. And the chairmanship of that mirror committee or that secretariat or the tag administrator is people like you guys. Some of you are sitting in this room. You can run a tag. You're thinking of running a tag in one area, I know. TAG is Technical Advisory Group. So all of the participants that are involved in the international process, all of these tags are approved by ANSI. They're accredited by ANSI. And we want to make sure they follow our same cardinal rules, the same process that I described earlier for domestic activity. So if you want to create an international solution, if you have an issue for which you want to create an international acceptance of your proposed document or your proposed approach, you need to get involved with ANSI and become engaged in that mirror committee. If you're looking to get involved in a new area and you want to propose a new work item in ISO or IEC or even ITU, you come and talk with us. We will help create that direction, that path, and we'll help develop a joint proposal. If you want a partner, if you want somebody to work with you, let's say somebody from Ireland, somebody was talking about Ireland. Who was? You were. And if you want to talk about working with somebody from Asia, you want Japanese or Chinese or Indians to work with you, we can get that. If you want Brazil, you want ABNT, which is their organization. We have linkages and MOUs with all these organizations, and we can process it in any way you want. So the key is that there are opportunities for us to participate, but there are also opportunities for us to take a leadership role. One more. As leaders of these committees. So U.S. again does very well there. And if you look at that slide, in ISO area, U.S. holds 117 chairmanships of all these committees, 111 secretariats, which is a big number. In the IC, we have 35 chairmanships and 23 secretariats. These are very impressive numbers, and I hope to continue with that. And I can tell you one country that is looming large on the international standardization scene is China. They have a lot of money. They're training a lot of their people. They have $2 trillion surplus, so money is no problem. Most of it is made by selling us their products and others, like Europe. And the government is committed to the resources. They see standardization as a tool for economic penetration in the global markets. They have a 5-year plan in which they have identified 7 major sectors. Energy efficiency is one of them. IT is one of them. There are other areas that they want to be not just creators of standards in partnership with others, but they want to be the leaders. And they are working hard to take over those roles. Every time there's an opening, when some committee chairman retires or some committee chairmanship is up for grabs because the country doesn't want to support it or the companies that are engaged in that area don't have the funding or don't want to bother about engaging, guess whose hand goes up? It's always China. And also lately Korea is right behind. And these countries recognize the value of standards. And if you think about it, the 2 most engaged countries in the world that see the value of standardization as a path to economic glory are China and Germany. Guess who are the latest, biggest growth exporters in the world? China and Germany. And Korea is not far behind. I was just in Seoul, Korea for the General Assembly. I was shocked. I didn't even know this. Shame on me. I should know this. They are the 8th largest economy in the world. I didn't know that. With only 50 million people. It's amazing. And small little island. Not even, I don't think it's bigger than Manhattan, Brooklyn, 5 provinces combined. Anyway, it's amazing. So, anyway, with this background, I want to shift to a different subject. And this is the main purpose of my being here. I wanted to come and help. I was expecting more people from the area, from university and other areas, but maybe they are listening or maybe you'll share it with them. I want actually you people to understand that University of Michigan and other academic institutions really stand to gain a lot from engaging in standardization. It's totally in your best interest and it's in your interest to be involved because there are a lot of benefits. And let me mention some of them to you. So engagement by academia and educational universities and research institutions especially, in standards development is critically important. I think we need your voice at the table. I mentioned that, not just in U.S. but internationally. But unfortunately, the engagement in education, in healthcare, in academia, in some sectors has been not as robust as it should be for the economic impact they have in our country. So if you take nothing else from my being here and talking with you, is that these things, in my view, are absolutely relevant to your mission and to your priorities the way I understand them. And I think you know that, and you're trying to get that message across. And I'm there to help you to get that message across. We'll do 38 of these 12 people, conferences if you want, but we'll get there. And your viewpoints and opinions are important to us because of your experience, because of your knowledge. And you are academic institutions and research institutions, and you know a lot more than some of the average people out there. But there are a lot of other benefits too. By participating in standardization, you get to meet a lot of very key and very significant and important people, government officials, agency people, leaders of the industry, leaders from associations, NGOs, scientists, and many more types of people serve as technical experts. You know that because you're one of them sometimes. And by participating in the process, you build relationships, you get intelligence collectively that you will not be able to get in any other way. And I think by participating, you capture some of the benefits. Some of them are advancing your position. Clearly, that's an important issue for everybody. Ultimately, reducing your cost and your expense, getting your efficiencies improved, and facilitating access to the market. In this case, you're not producing products, so market access doesn't apply to you. But on the reverse side, you can at least understand which are the right products and right solutions for you to use for your own application. And that gives you some sort of a competitive advantage, in my view. And standards development work, remember, goes on, whether you're there or not. So if you don't come to the party is still going on. And there are a lot of people who have testified, to our SBB program. We have a Standards Boost Business program, which is aimed at C-suite executives, and you know about this, and we use a lot of the CEOs to talk about how being engaged in this community helped improve their bottom line, how that helped improve their stock price or their performance or their growth. And one of those testimonials came from Russ Cheney, who's actually a good colleague of mine. He's on our board. He's the CEO and president of IAPMO, International Association of Plumbing and Mechanical Officials. And they're very active in that. And he said something very interesting, and I captured that. And I'll quote. He said, and the full quote is what I will read to you. This is part of the quote. He said, if a company is unsure about participating in standards development, I would remind them that in their absence, their competitors will decide their destiny. And that's a big deal to a lot of industries. I don't think, he continues, I don't think anybody, whether in the manufacturing sector or in the code implementation sector or in the training or education sector, would want someone else, particularly a competitor, determining their future. End of quote. Very good statement, smart statement. So anyway, there are people like that who are helping us reach the CEO and C-suite executives and helping them understand the value of engagement. In short, the standards are being developed every day, but to influence the outcome, you need to be at the table. So that's what my message was, and I also wanted to talk about something that one of you guys have been saying, and you recognize that face, probably? I don't. But that's James Durstad. Am I saying it right? How do you say? Durstad. And I was told that he may or may not be able to come, but if he isn't here, so please tell him thanks for allowing us to use his name. And what I really want to tell you about the President Emeritus of University of Michigan is this is a screenshot from a plenary address that he gave a few years ago. Yeah, if I remember, based on my notes, was called Reinventing the Research University to Serve a Changing World. That was the title. I don't know if you were there at that time, but he talked about a lot of very important things. In his remarks, he described how research universities have improved security, health, and quality of life through innovation. And he called on the need for renewed partnership among universities, industry, and government to keep research universities vibrant and thriving. He went on to suggest some ways to make this happen, including increased funding, boost to efficiency and productivity, and building talent and participation. So I'm going to take his remarks one step further and suggest another element which he didn't mention, but he perhaps could have. And that element is research universities should also make a strong commitment to standardization. Researchers should get involved in standards development work because researchers should sometimes also lead the standards development work because they have found the right solution and the right methodologies. Because, as we discussed earlier, research and innovation and standards are really joined at the hip. They depend on each other for their ultimate success. Any innovative idea cannot be commercialized without the tool of standardization or compliance to them. It doesn't happen. Mass-scale application always requires some level of standardization. So I think these are the type of opportunities that are ready for you. And if you're involved in these, and few can be mentioned that you're involved in, you send me a list, which was a very impressive list. Let's take a look at that. Here are some activities where University of Michigan in ISO and IEC is already engaged. A number of these are in management and administration standard areas, and some are in more technical focus. But I'm glad to see, honestly, Mike, I'm very happy to see this type of engagement. I think you guys are setting the stage for being front runners in this, along with a couple of others. I'll mention one later. And I think it shows that you see value in this engagement in standardization, and you see value in being at the table. But there's one very important committee that we're also talking about with you now that you really should be involved in, and I think you informed me today that you're working on that. And this is the ISO Project Committee 288. Is the newest addition to the standards landscape. It's led by Korea. CATS is the organization. I know the head of CATS very well. He's a good friend. And it focuses on management systems for educational organizations. That's what it focuses on. That's your home place. You may have heard some other famous ISO management system standards, ISO 9001 for quality, 14001 for environment, 50001 for energy management. So this new project committee is looking to establish a similar, in my view, a watershed management system standard that looks specifically at educational organizations. And I think this could have huge ramifications for universities all over the world. And in the U.S., it's very critical for us because we do have some of the largest and perhaps the largest amount of universities in the world. And the American universities, which are so admired throughout the world, and to quote Mr. Duderstadt, are unparalleled in other countries, are not involved in the development of the most prominent and most international standard relating to themselves. And I think this is something that we're missing an opportunity on as a nation. So I really hope you get your support that you need internally. If you want me to come out here, I'll come out again and again to talk to anybody you want, to convince them with you that they should be supporting it. And if others can join in, you can lead the development of a proposal and a tag from US. And I think we would like to help you. We can't do it ourselves. It's got to be done by you guys. We can only support and show you the path. So this is a great opportunity for us. And if you look at the map, it's a very interesting map. The blue ones are the countries that are participating. Orange countries are the ones that are observers. They're not official members. And gray ones are the ones that are missing. So if you look at the map, U.S. is gray. We're missing. We not only need to be there, we need to be there in blue. So I think that's what we need to get to, Mike, at some point. And if I can do anything to help you, I will. So this is just one example of absolute relevance, but there are many more. I'll give you 3 today because I was thinking about them yesterday when I was flying here. And I thought smart and sustainable cities is a huge opportunity. We have a major initiative going on in ANSI. We talk to all our partners worldwide. When I go to ISO General Assembly meetings, to the IEC, we meet with Japan. We talk about their smart cities plan. When we go to ISO assemblies, talk to Japan, Germany, China, India, Brazil. They all have sustainability and continuity plans for their cities, smart cities. In India, we just signed an agreement with India just 2 days ago. And they have 13 smart cities that they're going to develop. And Obama committed to supporting 3 of them through U.S. support, through ANSI and 2 others. And we're going to work on that. You guys are a smart, smart small city yourself. You can really contribute a lot. And if you engage few other large universities, you got core intelligence to really lead the world, not follow them. So when we look for best practices, we should look inwards right here. So that's an opportunity for us. And smart city includes so much that this is an area we'll be working on for the next 20 years. It includes energy efficiency, power generation, smart transportation, hospitals, alternative sources of energy, you name it. Smart city is everything. It's also public services. Another area, service economy. 78% of U.S. GDP is services, and we need to be focused more on that, using standardization as a tool that is deployed by manufacturing community and industrial America, and we're going to make a big effort. We formed an internal team at ANSI, and we'd love to have you guys join us. Another area is renewable sources of energy. Solar, hydro, all types of resources renewable that can not only reduce our dependency on oil, a lot of which is still imported. Actually, that's not true anymore. We're exporting now. We can export. We're not allowed to export. Do you guys know U.S. law prohibits us to export oil? Did you know that? That's true. We are not allowed to export oil. We can only import. Even now. And we are net export capable because of fracking and everything. So that needs to be changed. So anyway, alternative sources of energy will reduce our dependency on fossil fuels, cleaner environment, more efficient, and hopefully cheaper solutions down the road. You should get involved in that. It'll save you a lot of money too. And it's a societally right mission to focus on. So these are some of the examples. I think we can get you guys involved and others through you and through your example. I want to leave you now at the end with one subject, and unfortunately it's a university that you probably compete with in sports and otherwise. So I'll tell you a little bit about Purdue University, another large Midwestern university that is engaged in standardization work and is really reaping tremendous amount of benefits from it. So this picture shows Dr. Steve Elliott at Purdue University. He heads up a lab focused on biometric research, and he has been extremely engaged in standards development work. I don't know if you guys know about him or know him. You do. I don't know him. I've heard about him. Not only that, he has gotten his students directly involved. He's brought his students to development meetings, standards, cultivated their understanding of standards and conformity assessment. And this has resulted in a really robust program that has made great strides in contribution to standards for biometrics field. I don't know if you guys are engaged in that field, but they are. Are you part of that process with them? So Dr. Elliott and his students participate domestically in work of INSIGHTS, which is the International Committee for Information Technology Standards. Internationally, they are active participants in one of our most prolific technical committees, JTC1, which ANSI holds the secretariat for, and Karen Higginbottom has been a chairman from Hewlett-Packard for the last many years. Wonderful lady, very smart. So it's a joint committee of ISO and IEC. So the solutions are applied on both sides of the house. The benefits of participation for Purdue and others go both ways. They work with standards committees. They have influenced lab research. They have influenced in both specific projects and in entire research strands. They have actually come up, based on this, provided practical information to the standards committee. In one case, their research even led to the development of a brand new standard in the field of lab pioneering subjects that they worked on for about 1 year. And Purdue is just one example, and I think guys like you and others can get involved in benefits through participation and get some real practical solutions, not just for standardization, but for other applications also in research and in finding better ways of doing things. So the resolve that you would need to get into that would come from deeper engagement. That's really my message. So come on in. We're waiting for you. We'll work with you together to find new roads to success. Thank you. Okay.